Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. The Division Championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Hello and welcome to Access to Democracy. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Bill Raker. In today's program, we have a really interesting guest who has a really interesting job with a very interesting company, which we're going to learn a whole lot about before the end of the program. But our guest is Sara Patrick. Sara, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Sara is the president CEO of a company called Midwest Reliability Organization, MRO for short. Now, I'd never heard of MRO until I met Sara, and I suspect a lot of our viewers are not familiar with MRO either. But you'll find out why it is a really important organization that operates in the background of our lives every day. But before we get to that, Sara, we want to know a bit more about you. So, in doing some research, I found you've had a really interesting variety of careers. So why don't you tell our viewers and me about some of those positions that you've had that brings you or brought you into your role that you're in today?
Well, thank you for. I like to tell people that I am a lawyer by trade and a compliance professional by training or by choice. So when I graduated from law school, my first job was as an assistant attorney general for the state of Arizona. And I had focused in administrative law, so highly regulated fields. I worked in healthcare and actually represented the Arizona Department of Commerce for a bit. So I worked under two different attorney generals, including Janet Napolitano.
Oh, yes, we know that name.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So started out, but I had first visited Arizona when I was a senior in college and decided I wanted to live there, but I wasn't brave enough to go to law school all the way across the country. I'm originally from Michigan, so I actually went to law school in Indiana, but 3 weeks before I graduated, I met my husband, who is a Minnesotan, so I spent some time in Arizona, but was back in the Midwest before I knew it. And I worked for a bit at the time it was Thomson, so Thomson Reuters as we know it today, right, in the building that is soon to be no more.
It's going down pretty fast.
Yes, so I spent some time there as a reference attorney, as I was newly licensed in Minnesota at the time. And from there, I ended up working for a data broker here in Eagan. where I developed a bit of a passion for data privacy, and went from there to Midwest Reliability Organization. And I've actually been at MRO for 17 years this summer, so long time.
You certainly had some interesting roles along the way. Now, you mentioned privacy.
Yes.
And I understand that you are a certified information privacy professional. What exactly is that, and how do you become one of those?
So there is an organization today known as the IAPP, but originally known as the International Association of Privacy Professionals. They've now just adopted the name IAPP as they've expanded to incorporate cybersecurity and AI, particularly AI governance.
Sure. Yeah.
So working for a data broker in the early 2000s when we first became aware of data breaches and the kinds of information that organizations were collecting about us, the PII, the personally identifiable information, that organization or company collects that data, and they actually provide service to the property and casualty insurance industry. And it was just an area that was sort of new and developing in the privacy field, and that was something that really attracted me. So this organization in the early days of the early 2000s began to offer this certification. It requires completion of a number of coursework and then completion of an exam. And back in I think I've been certified since 2006. I think the first year they offered the certification was 2004, but I was pregnant. So
that interrupted a few things.
So I had to wait a little bit. And back then, you could only take the exam in Washington, D.C. So I had to travel to take the exam. Now they offer the exam all over the world at different times. And there was a point in time when Minnesota had the most certified information privacy professionals outside of D.C. in the U.S.
Do you happen to know what that number is or was?
I don't know what that number was. I just know that there was a concerted effort. There was a Twin Cities Privacy Network. I was engaged with that organization. But the gentleman who started that organization, he actually sold his business to Price Waterhouse. So, but yeah, there are a lot of folks, given the diverse industry we have here and the types of industry we have here, there was a lot of interest and really a lot of need in developing that expertise in protecting information. So we have a lot of those.
Which makes a lot of sense. And I want to follow on because they kind of go together. I know that you have a certification in another area.
Yes.
You are a certified compliance and ethics professional.
Yes.
I wish we had a lot more of those kinds of people in the world today, Sara. What's that all about?
So the Society for Corporate Compliance and Ethics is actually located here in the Twin Cities.
Oh.
And they do this certification and offer this. And again, this is another one where you have to complete coursework and an exam. This is something that I feel really helps in the work that we do, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah.
But as part of holding that certification, you learn how to evaluate a corporation's compliance program. And the organization that I work for, MRO, is really a compliance and ethics organization. So it's a really useful certification. I think that, we probably all do this, where we sort of think that every problem we have in our industry is unique to our industry. And the reality is there are very few challenges that are unique to any one industry.
Yeah, we should appreciate that fact, shouldn't we?
So being involved in organizations like the Society for Corporate Compliance and Ethics gives you a broader view of the types of practices or policies or even mitigation strategies that industries have adopted as we learn about different compliance risks and struggle sometimes with how do we maintain compliance or obtain compliance with different requirements? So I think that is an important component that we can learn from other industries besides the one in which we operate.
Well, it's clear, I think, that these two certifications that you have really are important, and they play a critical role in how business and industry should work not just in our country, but around the world. Now, these two certifications, are they perpetual, or do you have to do certain things to have them renewed?
There are maintenance requirements, so continuing education, as well as there's a fee to maintain the certification itself. So with both of them, and I'm also licensed to practice law in 2 states, so I have continuing legal education requirements as well as the continuing education requirements for these 2 certifications. But in a lot of instances, I'm able to double or triple dip.
Good. Yeah.
Where one course will satisfy requirements for multiple requirements that I have. I think that it is something that you work hard to earn those things, so maintaining them is well worth the investment in time and effort.
So Sara, before we transition from talking about all of these wonderful and interesting things that you've done into what your current role is anything else that you want to share with our viewers that adds to or complements why you're the right person for the job that you're in?
Well, one thing that comes to mind, I'm a big proponent of the Clifton Strength Finders, and doing that assessment and learning that learner is my number 1. I think that'll probably be a theme as we talk a little bit. Well, maybe it already has been a theme.
It's started to come out, yes.
And achiever is my number 2. And when I learned those facts about myself, it explained a lot about how I operate and really, quite honestly, I think some of the success that I've seen in my career so far.
It sounds like a part of that's kind of introspective about who you are and how you go about your business and your life. So now we know quite a bit about you, Sara. This company, Midwest Reliability Organization, I wish I could put out a quiz to our viewers to see how many of them have heard of it or know what it is and what it does. So, Sara, let's jump right in. What is the Midwest Reliability Organization?
So we are actually one of 6 entities in North America. So it's not just a U.S. operations that have delegated authority from the federal government here in the U.S. and provincial regulators to basically be a technical regulator of the bulk power system. Okay. So what does that mean?
Yes, that's the next question.
Well, I think that it helps to give some perspective as to how we began operations. So in 2003, there was a major blackout in the Northeast. It didn't really affect folks located here, but New York City and most of Ontario lost power for a significant period of time, affected 50 million people and billions of dollars of damage. And as a result, here in the U.S., Congress said, well, we're going to make the standards that utilities have to meet to operate, and we're going to make them subject to compliance monitoring, and we're going to make them subject to financial penalties up to $1 million a day per violation. And so the Energy Policy Act of 2005, so the wheels of government don't move that fast. We had our blackout in 2003, the legislation in 2005, and then the implementing regulations and the first body of standards became effective in June of 2007. And then I joined MRO in August of 2008, so I'm almost original. So originally, we were really focused on the compliance monitoring and enforcement program piece. So we've got this delegated authority from the government, and we have similar arrangements with Canadian provinces. And the standards address operations and planning. And for me, what was really interesting, because this is an entirely new industry for me, always working in highly regulated industries, but not electricity and energy, and thinking I knew how complicated and the sheer number of acronyms that are used in regulated industries, I thought I knew. I didn't think I was going to be overwhelmed, but boy, was I. Because this is, the electric system in North America is the largest machine ever invented, and it has an impact on everything we do. It is really foundational to our way of life, but it's also very complex and interconnected. And so we've got operations and planning, and things as simple as tree trimming. and well, we call it vegetation management. But that was a surprise to me that was an ongoing issue. But I guess some of that is, well, living here essentially in the prairie portion of the U.S., we don't have trees that grow year-round like they do perhaps in the Southeast. So it was a little eye-opening to me to kind of learn. And then this industry also has cybersecurity and physical security standards. So we at MRO, we go out and we audit utilities. So these are what are known as owners, operators, or users of the bulk power system. And based on the functions that they perform or the ownership interest they have. So transmission owners, transmission operators, generator owners, generator operators, and there's a number of other functions, but you're subject to compliance with the reliability standards, and we audit compliance with those, and we enforce compliance with those on behalf of, again, the federal government under delegated authority and the Canadian provincial regulators.
See, I knew this was going to be interesting. So the title of our program here with Sara is The Role of MRO in Keeping the Lights On. And so now that I've learned a little bit about what MRO is, let me try to phrase it in my words and see if I can get close to it,
Sure.
Okay? You're a government, federal government created kind of agency or organization charged with writing the regulations and auditing the power providers like Xcel Energy and Dakota Electric to see that they are complying with what those regulations are to make sure that the electricity is always there. I mean, we take it for granted that when we turn the light switch on, the lights are going to come on, right?
Yes, we are very fortunate in this country.
I think we are. You know, we hear stories sometimes around the world. Puerto Rico was a case recently, which is a territory of the United States. I guess this MRO kind of oversight doesn't extend down there?
Yeah, nope. It's really limited to the continental U.S.
Okay. So MRO, Midwest, is regional, right? So how big is this geography region?
So initially, when we began operation, there were 8 regions. Today, there are 6. So there has been some regional consolidation, and MRO benefited actually from that. We doubled in size in 2018, about a week before I was named president and CEO. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. But we operate in all or parts of 16 states and the 2 provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So I like to describe it as the central corridor of North America because we are the top of Texas, up through all or parts of 16 states and then the 2 provinces. So it's geographically quite large, and the challenges, given the geographic footprint, can be quite different from one part of our region and to the other.
So can you tell us how many power generating or power distributing? I mean, there's a difference between generating the power, distributing the power.
Yes.
I think it's the generation and the consolidation, distributing it, and then it's the lines that deliver it. I mean, there are all different kinds of components. You're overseeing all of that, right?
Well, we're bulk power, so we operate under federal authority. Okay. And bulk power is really the large components that from a generation perspective, there's thresholds, the number of megawatts that are generated from a particular source of generation. There's all sorts of different kinds of generation. And then transmission, usually interstate or interprovincial, because we do the system doesn't stop at the border, so we are interconnected with Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The distribution system is regulated at the state, so that's what delivers power to your home or to your business. Okay. Yeah. And that historically there's been a very bright line between what is federal and what is state regulated, with the introduction of what we call distributed energy resources, which in layman's terms, I'll probably oversimplify, and I'm not an engineer.
That's good. I need the simpler the better for me.
All of the solar panels on homes create that's sort of your home is distribution, but we need to know from a balancing, because electricity is generated and goes.
It doesn't stick around unless you can put it into a battery, I guess, right?
Right. Storage is another thing, another growing opportunity or area.
Sure.
But historically, we haven't had, commercial storage solutions, and it's a pretty big balancing act to make sure that the load, the generation meets the load without a whole lot of excess in either direction.
We don't want fluctuation.
Right.
So is it fair to describe bulk power as what is in or what is fed into the grid at any one time? Is that where the bulk power kind of resides?
Yes.
I'm beginning to get it, Sarah. You're doing a great job here. Okay. So I was going to ask, and I'll get to this question now. How many different members, I think MRO has members, is that right? How many different members does it have?
So I'm actually going to answer that question in two parts. So under our regulatory construct, we have registered entities. So depending on the functions that they perform and the thresholds, they're registered for those different functions. You have no choice in that.
Okay.
Based on your operations, you are a registered entity.
If you exist, you're in it.
And you meet the threshold for bulk to be considered basically under our umbrella. We have about 245 entities. We call them registered entities. We are also a member organization. We have about 93, 94 members. Those are, in large part, the utilities that we regulate. We do have some vendors or consultants who have joined as members. They aren't voting members, but that does keep them in the loop. The benefit of being a member of the organization, which doesn't cost anything, requires a very short application, and then we have that reviewed by some technical experts, and then as CEO I approve that, and what sector. I can talk about that in a moment, but the benefit of being a member of the organization is that then you can be involved in our organizational groups, including our board of directors, which gives you a little voice in our governance.
So you mentioned board. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how is the board selected, and what role do they have?
So we have a really large board, and I think I think I can say that with confidence. So under our bylaws, we have 7 different sectors. Sectors include things like cooperatives, municipals, investor-owned utilities. So Excel is an investor-owned utility. You mentioned Dakota Electric. They don't meet the threshold for registration, but Great River Energy, and they are a member of Great River Energy.
Which is where they get their power,
yes. So Great River Energy is a registered entity. So we have different sectors. Those are elected by the sector, and we have a 23-member board, 17 sector representatives who are elected by their individual sectors. Then we have 2 what we call regional directors who are also industry members. I mentioned that we had an expansion with the regional consolidation, and initially we established those seats to more quickly bring in representation from the expanded footprint. Now we utilize those to look for either geographic dispersion or particular skill sets. And then we have 4 independent directors who have no affiliation with any of the utilities that are regulated across North America. And that's an important component given the nature of the work that we do, that we have sort of a built-in conflict of interest where we have the executives from utilities sitting on the board of the organization that then can assess financial penalties. And the role of the board is I think this is typical of most boards. They set strategy, and they evaluate the performance of the CEO. So that built-in conflict is there. And as a lawyer, when I first started, I was scratching my head. But it really works well. It is kind of a brilliant model. one of the things that you had noted earlier about what MRO does, I did want to clarify, we don't write the standards. The industry writes the standards.
Oh, that's a big difference, isn't it? Yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
We do weigh in on whether the standard is auditable and provide some technical input in the development of standards, but industry writes the standards. Given the technical nature of the standards, that expertise, it's really a very unique sort of, I hesitate to use the term, but I'm going to use it anyway, self-regulatory model, in the sense that industry writes the standards and the organizations that monitor and enforce compliance are not government. We have delegated authority from the government, but we are all independent nonprofit organizations.
It's good to understand the difference there when we're talking about it. So has the organization ever had to discipline some organization or entity that they oversee because they weren't in compliance?
So the short answer is yes. We've been operating since 2007. The first 6 months of mandatory compliance, there was a waiver period. And then we began assessing financial penalties for violations of standards. The program has matured, and the vast majority, I want to say 85% of the non-compliance that's identified is minimal risk, zero penalties. But there are a number of enforcement actions that typically resolve in settlement agreements. And from MRO's perspective, we're really about education and outreach because we have sort of a shared goal with industry. It's not about that enforcement stick is an important stick or important tool
the lights on
in our toolbox, but it's not the first one we reach for.
Okay.
And outreach and education is the biggest tool in our toolkit to help entities avoid non-compliance, to obtain and maintain that compliance. So sharing best practices and mitigation strategies and information about emerging risks and new standards is really a lot of what we focus on. But we do have that authority, and we use it.
Sarah, how many employees do you have?
We have about 80.
80.
So I frequently say that I work with really smart people because I have a lot of electrical engineers that I interact with, and power system engineers and system operators, a handful of lawyers, some CPAs. I think the average educational level within MRO is, there's so many advanced degrees within the organization that I'm really fortunate because lifelong learner. I learn something new every day.
We have 1 minute left in the program, Sarah, maybe a little bit less. Any final thoughts that you want to leave with our viewers about what MRO is and does and why it's so important to all of us?
Absolutely.
45 seconds.
Okay. Well, it is really all about reliability and security. And as I noted earlier, that the electric grid is foundational to our way of life. It is one of the things that we talk about in this industry is that it may only be 7% of the U.S. economy, but it's the first 7% because you have nothing else without electricity. So the work that we do is really, really foundational and really, really important.
Very important. Well, Sarah, thank you for being a guest on Access to Democracy. Thank you for telling us all about the Midwest Reliability Organization. Thank you for keeping the lights on.
Our future is bright.
And thank you for watching Access to Democracy.